Hey, we should be live now. Hey, I'm joined by my European brother from over there in Austria, the Varangian Vigilante. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing well, and I love the description you put in there.
The
Teutonic
Teutonic Titan.
Titan. I
Yeah,
don't need to trademark.
yeah, go for it, mate. Go for it.
Thanks so
Hey,
much for inviting me, and yeah, this had to be.
yeah, yeah. It's cool to hang out and get your take on your comics and your favorite memories associated with your favorite books, kind of thing. How long have you been collecting for, anyway? Do you remember your first
Uh,
comic?
I remember, I don't remember the first comics I got. Hey, Sean,
Mhm.
uh, but the first comics I had must have been a Mickey Mouse book because they are so popular in Europe, uh,
Yeah.
on the continental part, and the first comic book I bought, I can totally remember that was when I was with my family in the lake. I don't know how old I was, but it was a German Masters of the Universe magazine.
Okay.
I know that Hordak was in there because as a kid, Hordak was my favorite character. Uh, and Leech was also from the Horde in the book.
That must be the
And
later version of Masters of the Universe, right?
there was there were here we had our own Masters comics that were written by two German guys, and those are distributed in all the German countries. Yes,
Yeah.
parts of Switzerland, Germany, Austria. Here, yeah.
I wonder why Masters of the Universe was popular in Germany.
Big blonde guy, muscle.
Yeah. Taking over the universe.
Exactly.
How do you say Masters of the Universe in German, anyway?
Uh,
I bet it sounds terrible.
I told you.
You don't remember it.
I don't remember. This is a.
Is
I
that because
think
it's hard to remember in two languages?
Giganten des Universums. I just a moment. Yeah, just look at the hardcover. Die Giganten des Universums.
Okay, fair enough. It
Like the
sounds
giants of the universe.
it sounds formidable. So should we move on to your first comic book then? What you want to show us today? Your first comic memory?
Actually, one of my first comic memories was from the German reprints of the Italian Topolino, which we call here lustiges Taschenbuch, like funny paperback. This
Yeah.
is not the one that I had as a child. I bought this again because this was the cover of the original print, and this was a retelling of the Nibelungensage
Right. Yeah.
with Disney characters. And as I always loved fantasy, and the Nibelungen Saga is one of my favorite stories
Do
ever
you listen?
told.
Do you listen to Wagner when you're reading it?
Later, listen to Wagner, but Wagner is brilliant.
Yeah,
I really
because he
love
did the
the
ring cycle as well, didn't he?
yeah, especially the Ride of the Valkyries, the
Yeah.
Valkyren, and here's with Donald as Siegfried.
Right.
So
Is
this
it?
book
Is that feature? Is that Gotterdammerung? Is that
I
part of
didn't get
the
the name wrong.
Link
Yeah,
cycle?
it's it says three part. It's Siegfried and Götterdämmerung. So
Right.
the beginning is, I mean, here it's always it's. Do you want to really see Germanistic students fight in here? You just have to mention Siegfried or Hagen von Tronje. Which side
Right.
are you on? This is like
Okay.
a big fight in German culture.
Right.
Pro Siegfried or pro Hagen.
Okay. Because I remember more the I sort of remember from as a kid the Bugs Bunny cartoon where they're doing the opera and it's, kill the rabbit with Elmer Fudd.
It's not over until the fat lady.
Yeah, yeah. There's always a fat lady in opera. So you say they were really big, those the Disney books in Europe when
Those were so big. Those are still big. Those are still coming out. And the thing is that here, at least I don't know how it is in England, but in continental Europe, we all got these Italian reprints because
mm,
books were written by Massimo De Vita or and other brilliant Italian cartoonists. and those differed a lot from the US Disney. So it was sometimes so interesting when you grew up with these Italian translations in German, and the German translations are brilliant in this one. So that's one thing. Is like usually I really despise reading translated books, but the early Disney stuff was written in such a poetic German, so that it's really. When you're young and you're learning the language, it helps you so much, and it sounds so beautiful.
Cool.
So I'm absolutely still reading those, and I'm sometimes still buying new ones because the quality still holds up from them. And so it's so interesting to have such a different perspective of Disney, because we didn't really get a lot of the US Disney. And when you have seen like some of the Disney cartoons with Donald Duck, etc., they always were like, he acts so differently.
Right. That's interesting. I don't think they really were a thing in the UK. I never remember seeing hardly any Disney comics. Even the cartoons, didn't see them that much either. It was mainly like the Looney Tunes, and Hanna-Barberas that we saw. Didn't see many Disneys at all, apart from the big movies,
It's
feature
so
films.
interesting because even though technically you're European,
Yeah.
it's that there's so many differences. Like in Europe, Nintendo was number one, and in the UK, everybody was pro Sega, which is
Right.
funny because I loved Sega more than Nintendo because there was blood in the games.
Right. Yeah, we all got. I suppose as being an island, we've got our own blinking weirdness, haven't we? We've got our island ways.
It's with a limited gene pool. It's
Yeah. No, I don't think it's that limited. We've been invaded so many times over the centuries. As all the blinking the Germanic tribes and all that all came over, and
Saxons.
Romans, Angles, Jutes. We've had all sorts. So, you say they're still being written now? Like new ones are still coming out of the same Italian ones translated to German.
Italian and Scandinavian.
Okay.
We have a lot of Scandinavian artists now too on those books. They're still so funny to read and interesting. So those aged very well.
Cool. I remember the ones that we used to get. Like we used to get Asterix. So they were French ones. I think there's a few Tintin. We saw a few Tintin, but mainly Asterix. So me and my house, and my little brother loved them. We all loved them. We get the omnibuses. We'd all read them.
The Spanish books, like what are they called in Spanish? Here they were translated as Clever and Smart.
No.
With the two agents.
No, doesn't ring any bells.
Like from Ibanez. So we also had a lot of Spanish comics here.
Right. Yeah. No, the only foreign ones that I remember seeing is Asterix, and then later on there was Forbidden Planet had a couple of Manara books that I looked at they look like fun. Is it Manara with the women's asses on all the covers?
Yeah, Mino Manara. I love his art.
Oh yeah. Ooh. Getting hot under the cover just thinking about it. So, have you got a favorite Disney character?
Favorite Disney character? I mean, old school Disney probably, because nowadays everything is a Disney character.
That's true. Yeah.
But old school, I always loved Donald Duck because he was such a laughable loser, and yet, however, he managed to survive.
Right.
Which I have very well adapted into my life.
Right. You look out. So he's been an example for you in your life, as old Donald Duck. I think we used to get Scrooge McDuck cartoons like back in the 80s or something like that. I think it was Scrooge McDuck with the three nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie or whatever. I kind of vaguely remember that.
Called in German Tick, Trick und Track.
All right. What is that? What's that? Scrooge McDuck?
Yeah, and Scrooge McDuck was Dagobert Duck, because they named him after a Franken king.
Oh, okay. So you didn't go with the Christmas Carol like Charles Dickens version then, Scrooge. Okay. You got your own misers over there. Okay. What about obviously Disney movies are massive, but are the books compared to the movies, or are they like chalk and cheese, like no comparison?
Come again?
Are they the Disney movies? Are they
Yeah.
comparable to the actual books, or is the humor and the sort of way they're done a lot different?
It's totally different. Some characters are totally written different because the Italians, especially Massimo De Vita, he really liked Goofy, and Goofy
Right.
was the protagonist in there. So he was not the doofus as he is portrayed in the American versions.
Yeah.
Uh, and especially there's a fantastic saga like of the Sword of Ice. I think even IDW reprinted that now as a hardcover, and this is an epic fantasy Disney saga that is inspired by Lord of the Rings, and,
Right.
and Goofy is the hero in that story.
Okay, that's cool.
And
Oh,
I
and
totally
then,
recommend everybody to read that one because it's brilliant.
do you reckon it'll be just as good though in like if it's translated to English? Because you were saying how it's like you love the German language used in it. Do you think it will translate as well into English as it does into German?
It always depends who translates it. That's the thing. For the love of the gods, I can't buy a German translated book that is translated by Panini, by the German part of Panini.
Right.
They're translating it in this awful Berlin youth language, and
Uh,
it's like poison to my it's like poison to my brain when I'm reading it.
well, is it like the trendy version of German or something like that? Is it?
Yeah, it's like this horrible. It's like it's just. I think it's horrible when you're living in Germany, but it's even more horrible when you're living in Austria and actually uh, and actually have a real culture.
Right. Okay.
And
So right.
DuckTales was amazing. I absolutely loved DuckTales as a kid because I was always into adventure movies, adventure series, and also like in the books that the Italians always had such fantastic stories with Scrooge McDuck going on adventures, treasure hunts.
Cool. Anything else you want to add about that one before we move on to your next memory?
My next memory is actually quite recent memory because
Okay.
this is a book that made me collect US floppies.
Okay.
Wonder Woman Conan.
Okay,
I
that's cool.
when I was got back into comics, I was only buying trades and hardcover editions. But
Right.
when DC and Dark Horse back then announced this title, and I've seen this variant cover by Liam Sharp, which is a fantastic British artist from Derby, I think.
Right.
And the way he drew Conan here, looking as a perfect mixture of Busima's Conan and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I knew
Your Uncle Arnold.
and I went out of my way to find a German comic book shop where I was able to order it. I was always very reluctant buying single issues because I know myself, and once I buy one, I'm gonna get sucked into this black hole of collecting single issues. Very well choice. This is such a fantastic cover. And I was able to find Andy's Comics Express. And then I also found out that I can make subscription to comics there for cover price.
Right.
And ever since I'm collecting single issues. So this is the book that
That's the book that got you into it. Let's talk about it before then, because we didn't actually talk into your comic buying habits. Like when you first started buying, was it like the chunky books there that you showed?
yeah, the trade paperbacks and Omnibi, because I started to read comics again. That was around 2008.
Yeah. When did you first start reading comics then? Did you not get any American comics back then?
Oh no, back then I only, you went to because here comics are mostly sold on train stations. So when I was at school back then, went with train to school and then I bought some comics. In the 90s, you bought some Witchblade because the chick is sexy and also sometimes some Mad magazine and what they had, but was always the German translations at the train station here.
Right.
And then after a while, just like you still love the comic characters, But when you're like in your early 20s, you need your money for other stuff, and then I just stopped. And when I started studying history in Salzburg, and I lived back then in Upper Austria, and I had like 1 to 1.5 hours train journey to university. So I was thinking, it's like, I don't really want to read all the study stuff on the train. So I was looking in bookstores, comics again, and then I got the Dark Horse trade of Conan, obviously, because I always was a Conan fan. Even though I was not reading the early Marvel comics back then, only later in trade. And and this is how it started, like on a train, then reading it, and then actually it's like, oh, comics have come such a long way. Because when I grew up, that was we got the most of the translations here still from the Bronze Age, like Comics Code. And then reading the Dark Horse, we had several sort of Conan too here, but it was never up to grasp for me when I in the stores where I was. So I only knew like the tamer version, which I still loved. But when I first read the first trade of the Dark Horse run, I was like, wow, finally books that really match up to what Robert E. Howard wrote. And then I researched more and more, and like I opened this wormhole.
Right. How did you first get into Conan then? What was the first made you?
Arnold.
Arnold.
So of course, Austria is like Arnold is.
Especially Uncle Arnold, isn't it? Do you call him Uncle Arnold?
Actually, just Arnold.
Fair enough.
Of course, die steirische Eiche is the student oak.
All right, cool. So so the movie got you into it, and then you started getting the trades, and that particular cover was what got you into.
From the movie, it was to Robert E. Howard's original stories.
Yeah,
I was always a fantasy fan, and when I was around, I think it was around 11, 12, when I started playing fantasy role-playing pen and paper games. Not D&D. D&D did a little bit, but here in the German part of Europe, we have Das Schwarze Auge. I think it's sometimes translated with Realms of Arcania. It's a fantastic fantasy world, and then also starting devouring everything fantasy. Back then, when I was young, I was more of a high fantasy fan. So I loved
Realms of Arcania, was that?
Yeah. So I absolutely loved, of course, Lord of the Rings, everything Tolkien, and my most favorite fantasy book back then was Dragonlance by Weiss. Absolutely, like Raistlin is one of my favorite characters in fantasy. But then, of course, I always loved Conan. And hey, man caves, greetings. Mm-hmm. And the more I grew up, and especially the later I was in my 20s, it was always more. I started to appreciating low fantasy more than high fantasy.
Right.
I think once you meet more people and you really see like the bullshit whole society is built upon, you are really more into like the darker fantasy with gray areas and not the epic stories.
Right.
The wonderful thing about Conan is like everything is very much relatable and on a smaller scale. So Conan has interest to have adventures for himself and not for the greater good.
Right.
High fantasy is often very much like saving the world. And just like surviving.
It's like an everyday story of a barbarian going about his travels, and rather than like taking on massive armies to fight the evil wizard and drop rings into volcanoes.
Exactly, because I remember when I was watching Conan the Barbarian for the first time, I really loved it. But it's like at the Battle of the Mounts, I thought, there's only so few soldiers.
Right.
Hey,
Just waving at people in the chat. Did you ever games master your role-playing games? I used to do loads of role-playing games back in the day. I didn't like D&D though, because I'm always one for like not the mainstream sort of things. Like if they're too popular, I'm like, I don't want to play that. I want to play something else. Same with my bands. Like I like the underground bands. So
it's always the best now.
Yeah. We had this UK like D&D called Dragon Warriors, but I just thought it was a much better system as well. It was a much easier system, and it made more sense. The battle, you had an attack score, you had a defense score. You took the defense away from the attack. That gives you how much you have to roll to get a hit.
I think what a very good system is. What is it called again? That's which is the system you can basically use for everything.
Oh, not GURPS. Generic universal role-playing system.
Yes, exactly.
I had the first one from that. It was called Man to Man, the very first module that they brought out, like when they was like field testing it, kind of thing. So I've got that still.
Anyway. What I really liked is I really loved the system for Mr. White Gloves. I really like the system for Call of Cthulhu.
I never played that one. I always wanted to play it. I got another one. Sorry, what were you saying?
What I like about it is like you don't throw. It's not a dice battle. Like I totally love the world of Vampire the Masquerade, but a battle takes like 1 hour sometimes. It's such a overcomplicated battle system.
Yeah.
I always love when there is less throwing and more talking and more world building and more character.
More role playing.
More role playing.
Yeah. Which is the main. Yeah. I didn't get Call of Cthulhu, but I always liked the look of it. But I never actually bought the module. But I got one called Chill. I don't know if you ever heard of one called Chill. That was like another popular horror kind of role-playing game, and I was doing a campaign on it. Like sometimes you play a system, and we started doing the battle, and you suddenly go, "Hold on, these rules are really crap." And I realized they were like the way the rules were. There was no way they was going to kill this vampire. So I kind of made up my own de facto rule on the spot, kind of thing. Like, okay, we're combined because you're fighting together. We're combining your attack score, so you actually can hit the blinking bastard and hold him down and stick a stake through his chest. Otherwise, it would have been impossible on the rules that they actually had.
But it's also funny how many roleplay gamers we have in this community. Like I think JP and John Comics with Kids, they have a D&D group going on online.
I know.
So it's astonishing, like how these hobbies, with especially comics, wrestling, metal sometimes, and roleplay games, like how these go together so well.
Yeah. Did you ever play any superhero role-playing games?
No.
Okay.
Those were not really available here.
Right.
I think DC had back, or Marvel, they had like a roleplay game, but it was never interesting for me. I always liked either horror role-playing games or fantasy role-playing games. I also tried a while to play Middle Earth role-play game.
Yeah.
But the system was not so enjoyable.
Right, yeah. I think I used to do Villains and Vigilantes. It was a really, really cool game, Villains and Vigilantes.
I don't know if we had that one here. It's also interesting that, some systems like D&D or Shadowrun, they are like all over the globe. But then it's also interesting how different countries have different roleplay systems. Now everybody has a roleplay system. Even Vakvikianis from Burzum has his own roleplay system.
Yeah, he's got his Earth's working hard on his comic readers. Okay. Anything else you want to say about that Conan comic? Was you a fan of Wonder Woman as well? Is that why you picked it up, or was it just purely for Conan?
It was because of Conan, and the cover was. I bought every Conan comic, and I totally love Wonder Woman, but I have no space in my collection to collect Wonder Woman. So my collection focus is really on Conan, Red Sonja, Ravenloft.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. Never played it.
Conan, Red Sonja, Vampirella, and Transformers. So this is the 4 main pillars of collecting. And if I have all the space and all the money in the world, would I collect Wonder Woman? Yes, because I love Greek mythology.
Yeah.
And there's so many fantastic Wonder Woman comics in history. but it's really when you have limited funds, limited space, you really have to pick your battles. And
Yeah, I've never collected really any Wonder Woman in the past, but it's always like I kind of look at some now. I think, oh, why didn't I pick up the odd Wonder Woman here and there? I wish I had done. I've got a few when they like for crossover events and like like annual specials kind of thing, but not that
books
many.
are always a very good way to collect more characters. But also this Wonder Woman Conan, even though it's written by Gail Simone, it's a fantastic story. Like Gail Simone can really craft a story if she cares and is not every 5 minutes on Twitter.
All right. I've read a few of the Red Sonjas that Gail Simone did. I think I've got a trade of that.
It's like that's a big battle within the Red Sonja community where I'm sort of in the middle. I totally accept that some people say, this is not Red Sonja.
Okay.
This is a different character, like who is like a drunk redhead that just curses around. And I say, yes, this criticism is totally valid. But I just see it as a different multiverse version of Red Sonja. Right. And the story itself is really well done. So I have the Gail Simone omnibus here. So obviously I care enough to buy that one.
Yeah.
It's like, even though I have my criticism for it, I'm also crew. Back in the days, maybe I would also totally have condemned it. But I'm also at a point where I'm saying, I can totally accept that it's something different, and if I don't like it, I just don't buy it. But here the story went well, and I was able to accept it as an alternate take on Red Sonja. I'm still not in a point in my life where I can accept any differentiation. Every differentiation is from the character that I love, but I'm at a part in my life where I'm. In German, we call this Altersmilde, which basically means like you're more forgiving the older you are.
Right. I've just realised something. I'm going to put you on the screen to show your third comic. I've got to rush out and turn off some food because I've just realised I left it on. And we're talking for a lot longer than I thought we was going to. So I'll let you show your third comic and I'll be back in about 2 minutes.
I will do that.
Look after the chat for me. Behave. No getting your bum out or anything, yeah?
Actually, I don't... now the chat mode. This is my third comic. This is the first appearance of Deathset from the Marvel UK Transformers run. I'm a big fan of Transformers. And the Marvel UK had some own stories with some own characters added to the Transformers mythology. And this is, in this book, Death's was introduced into the Marvel universe, which back then was also the Transformers universe. And Marvel, prior to that, made a little sketch of Death's. So the Death's is, the rights are with Marvel and not with Hasbro. So later on, Death's was shrunk by Doctor Who, the Seventh Doctor, which was also back then part of Marvel to the size of humans, and then went from the Transformers universe through the vortex of time to the Dragon Breaths universe, which is the 81st century. And then he met the Doctor again, and then he went to Fantastic Four in Earth 616, and with a few adventures here and there, this is how he became part of the regular Marvel universe. And last year we had also a new Death's run, which was horrible because it was written by Tini Howard. And Tini Howard, I don't even want to go there.
All right. Okay, he's got a convoluted storyline there.
Back in the day, I read the German translation of this, and now finally I was able to track this book down, the British original, and this was actually a book for my for my grade list for 2021, but I was already able to get it this year, and I couldn't be happier because this book is luckily easier to track down in Europe than in the US because it's from Marvel UK.
Yeah.
it's really getting very pricey, and I'm very lucky to get it for a good price and in a very good conditions, because the Marvel UK paper is so razor thin and it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get from these weekly titles good condition one. I think we had a question here from Mr. White Gloves. I also low-key collect the Savage Sword of Conan magazines. I have some, but I first want to complete the first Conan run at Marvel, and this is a future quest. But I'm buying all the Omnibi of Savage Sword of Conan because I absolutely love the black and white art, and of course, this is way closer to Robert E. Howard's vision, because the magazines were not under the comics code. So you have your Hiboran amount of nudity in there and some really nice gore.
Because I think you were saying that when Marvel took Conan back, he was worried that it wasn't going to be as good as it was with Dark Horse.
I was very worried. I remember when they announced that Mahmoud Asra is painting Conan, drawing Conan, and he's living in Vienna, and and I wrote him, yeah, that's because I'm German.
That explains it. Mystery solved.
Heilige Scheiße, and I was tweeting him is like, hey, that's a good thing, because when it's shite, I know where I can find it. And he was like totally taking this as a joke, and it was so fun because then we wrote and we talked. And he's like, also was like, he wants to find out more about the original Conan, and I still had an online code for the digital books, because I have all the Robert E. Howard stuff anyway in books. So I was gifting him my digital code.
Right.
And so Mahmoud and I also became friends. So we met in Vienna and talked about Conan. And I hope in the future he can maybe also come on my channel. But you never know with the Marvel contracts if they're allowed to, because
Right.
contract with Marvel, but he's fantastic and he truly loves Conan. His art is mesmerizing.
Yeah,
and,
I think I saw some covers that you got from him. You showed them in the video ones. You got them signed by him as well, didn't you?
Yeah, and I gifted away when we met in Vienna and asked, hey, I just like, I'm gonna do a video where I also talk about your Conan run, the one we did with Jason Aaron, and I want to give away some books. You can sign them. Was all no problem. Oh, Walbrick. Sehr schön. Sehr schön. And yeah, it's like he's so nice, and he also has such a nice family. I also was back then working at the Arnold Schwarzenegger Museum, so I invited him there and gave him a tour through Arnold's childhood house. So it's and but going back to the original question, is I was very afraid that under Disney they can't do a proper Conan, and the Mahmoud also told me in sort of violence they have like basically no limits. There was only one thing where he had too many decapitations, where Marvel said, oh, they gotta censor this a little bit, but otherwise they can totally go there with violence, but no nudity. Disney won't accept nudity, and I think what Marvel does most under the rule of Disney is they give the artists in sort of violence a long leash, because apparently in the US nobody cares about violence, which here in Europe we are way more keen to censor violence, and nudity is like no problem. While in the US it's totally different.
Right, so, thank you for looking after the chat. I've been so useless tonight. I've been dinner cooking. I never had my lead ready to bloody well. Suddenly the battery was going to run out. I had to run and get my lead. I'm so crap at this stuff. Yesterday I blinking nearly missed the chat with M3 Lions because I couldn't tell the time. Anyway, talking of Marvel UK, go back to that again. There are not that many characters from Marvel UK or comics in the Marvel UK runs that are that big keys, are there? I think there's Captain Britain first appeared, and possibly his sister might have appeared in a UK Marvel. And then there's Death's Head, but I can't think of any other characters that are really, or comics that are really big keys in the whole of Marvel UK, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, Dragons, also by Furman and Choff Senior, the Dragon's Breath, I think.
Right. He's got Dragon Claws, is it?
Dragon Claws, Dragon Claws.
Yeah, I remember hearing
it. Issue 5 of Dragon Claws here because this was the first appearance in outside of Transformers and Doctor Who magazine from Death's Head.
Right, and I did have that death metal 4-parter because and I'm not sure. Is there only one death metal 4-parter? I had to get it because I like death metal music, so it's like I've got to have a comic called Death Metal. It was pretty good.
I absolutely love the Marvel UK reprints, especially the Conan ones because they are such an oddity. The coloring is all different. There's some exclusive covers, and especially when they combined the Avengers and the Savage Sword of Conan, you're getting such fantastic amalgamation covers, and I also really like that we reprinted in black and white because the pencils pops way more sometimes without the coloring. So it's very nice to have these, and these are totally undervalued. You can totally get. I got like the whole Conan and Savage the whole Avengers and the Savage Sword of Conan one for €50 from UK.
Cool. Not bad. Okay. What memory are we on now? We've done 4 books. We've done 3 books. I've done 3 or 4. I always lose track. How many we have so far? We have 2 books left. All right, let's move on to number 4 then.
Number 4 is a book that is very close to my heart.
Yeah.
And very nice and adventurous memory.
Oh man, yeah, that's
variant number 1. Which was a gift from Steve Whiting, one of the most awesome members in the community. And he told me he's gonna gift me one of his Conan number 1s, and he shipped it out exactly in the week when the first lockdown with the COVID happened. So literally shipped it out because the USPS put it on a fucking freighter on the fucking ocean. And it took, I think, 4 months.
Wow, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was really...
man.
He was like, oh, I'm going to get you like a new one. It's like, no, but it's like... If something would happen, it's like a Conan book less on this world. It made me really, really sad. And so I have like this. I'm so happy it arrived saved because now I'm not only having Conan issue number 1, but I also have this memory like waiting 4 months for it. And and what is even more important to me is. This is one of Steve's books. This is one he picked up back then, and before the prices really went up.
Yeah.
So it's a book from a friend, and it means so much to me. It's if I would have gotten like a Conan number 1, I would be happy, like having a Conan number 1. But having the Conan number 1 from a friend adds so much importance to this book because it's now filled with memories. Yeah, it's my Corona book.
I think she should be chucked out for that pun. I thought it was Germans who had no sense of humour, not Dutch. that was terrible. Coronan. Oh dear.
Austria is like we're the only Germans, even though some Austrians hate when being called German because they're trying to avoid they're trying to forget this. But as an actual historian, is like there is no national being Austrian is a citizenship, but it's not a nationality.
Right. Okay.
Like we have Hungarian Austrians, we have Slovak Austrians, German Austrians. So it's people are so fucked up in their head.
Okay. So all I know about Austria is that you love the sound of music. It's like everyone's favorite. You all in the hills singing. The hills are alive. The sound of music. Yeah. Do you do that a lot over there?
Funny thing is, I never heard about the sound of music until I studied in Salzburg.
Right.
because Salzburg is the city where Sound of Music takes place. And on my way to the university, you had all these Sound of Music tours, and so I've never ever seen. I'm pretty sure there's some American Austrians, but not originally.
You must know the Do Re Mi song, though, surely.
And Austrians again, but I've never ever seen Sound of Music.
So you don't know the Do Re Mi song, then? You don't even know that.
No,
I was going to let you sing out that one at the end.
Like, no regular person in this country has seen this movie.
Oh man.
It was not it was not even a thing until people found out they could make money with tourists.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What was the last book? Oh, Conan. Oh man, that's an awesome book to have. Rather, and it's an awful. It's an awesome book to have. That is, and to
miss out.
It's a funny story now to talk about the waiting 4 months for it, but at the time, I bet you were like, "That's gone. Never going to see that again."
Yes, you always try to forget about it, but then of course, always when you try, shortly before you fall asleep, is always there's a Conan #1 out.
It's lost.
Maybe on the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah. Oh man. So did you actually read it, or are you going to keep it just sealed up without? Have you like gingerly turned the pages, or you've?
I have I have so many reprints of Conan #1. Like the classic ones in trades, the True Believers one. I mean, it's even reprinted in issue number 23. So I've never opened this book. I just put it immediately into Myla.
Yeah. It's a historic piece. You haven't got to read the historic pieces.
Yeah, especially it has a historian. It's like this must be very well treated and put into Myla archivals.
This is Jackson Roy Kirk's take on why it took so long to turn up.
Pirates. So it's like because some pirate chick like Bellet.
Yeah. Cool. Have you got a favourite Conan story or a favourite comic run, rather than the book, but a comic run of Conan with your favourite story in it? Is there such a thing? Or your favorite Conan writer, maybe?
My favorite Conan writer is Roy Thomas. And it's so interesting because Roy Thomas had no idea about Conan before they proposed him at Marvel to write about Conan. Then he researched it and he adapted the whole stories of Robert E. Howard so well and added so much more to the mythology. And a big reason why Conan is still, I wouldn't say so popular because it's still very much a niche character within pop culture, but the reason why Conan is still around and other characters from that time are not is because Roy Thomas introduced through the comics Conan to a new audience and really he really improved. I wouldn't say improved, but he really
enriched it. Maybe
he made the world bigger, and he added so much to this mythology. So Roy Thomas is the reason why Conan is still out there today in mainstream popular culture.
Yeah, because some of the stories from there are adapted from Kofar. Do you remember? You ever read the Kofar books? It was by Gardner Fox. Because I knew Kofar because I picked up a trilogy of Kofar stories, like by Gardner Fox from like a jumble sale when I was a kid. So to me, it was like Kofar. He's the barbarian. Who's this Conan guy?
Yeah, but there's a lot of the stories were adapted from some fantasy authors where Roy Thomas just asked him if he can adapt the story. Viel Spaß beim Putzen und danke, dass dir die Show gefällt.
I think Splash Page might have collapsed on his keyboard. Does anyone know where he is? Because he's typed in some kind of nonsense. I think he must have collapsed on his keyboard. Someone...
He has to go cleaning and he liked the show very much.
All right, cool.
Yeah, it's Roy Thomas is such a fantastic storyteller. And I have never read his Avengers run, even though I have it in the British reprints. But I think one day I also have to read it because there's also some fantastic stories in there, as I heard. But also his Arak, Son of Thunder run at DC Comics, which basically is it started as a Conan knockoff, but it became its own thing, and a wonderful journey through history from the times of Charlemagne, where a Native American was on sea found by Vikings, and from the Vikings he was brought to the court of Charlemagne, and then had a journey from the Frankian Empire over to the Eastern Roman Empire and to Japan.
Okay. Yeah, I started collecting that because you can normally get them pretty cheap. Them Arak.
Yeah.
Like
you can get the whole run for around $40 to $50.
Yeah, so I'm slowly getting that, but it's kind of low on the back burner at the moment. There's other ones I'm kind of going for more, but if I see them, I'll pick them up, kind of thing.
My favorite Conan story, it's a tough one. What I would say, I think, is one of the best stories adapted is The Frost Giant's Daughter, because I think it has been adapted now 3 times. In the original Sword of Conan, fantastic, absolutely fantastic, by Berenson Smith and Roy Thomas. Then it was also adapted at Dark Horse. I think was it Kurt Busiek or was it Truman? Nevertheless, the adaptation. Wait a moment, I can. It doesn't say on the trade.
Okay.
Very well adapted by Dark Horse Comics, and then the French adaptation recently by Robin Recht is also amazing. So this is one of the seminal stories of Robert E. Howard that is splendid in every adaptation, and it's for nowadays it's like a very basic fantasy story, as Robert E. Howard's stories were all Busiek's run is so good. And in a few days, the Busiek Omnibus from Dark Horse will come out at Marvel as a hardcover edition, and I already pre-ordered that one. Looking forward to it, even though I already have the Dark Horse Omnibus for
behind me. So you got a few versions of it then. Oh man, I've only just started on Conan myself. Actually, it's actually Fire's Revenge. He was in chat earlier on. He's responsible for getting me reading Conan, because I was like, no, superheroes. I stick to superheroes. I can't collect blinking everything. So superheroes. I got rid of my war books I had. I got rid of my horror books. Got concentrated on superhero, and now I'm trying to get my war books and my horror books back, because I wish I hadn't got rid of them now. And now I'm trying to collect Conan as well. And I've gone off on Arak. I've got a few Elrics as well, and I also started on Cull as well. I've got a Cull run going, which I think is going to be easier to collect than the Conan run.
Yeah, Cull is also something I have to collect in the future. I think I have at the moment 2 Cull comics. One of but it's also like I have to dive in, and especially here in Europe, it's sometimes very tough to get to some comics if you don't want to pay twice the amount of shipping that the book is actually worth.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think I've got a double of like number 18 or something if you need it.
Yeah, oh, nice.
Let me know. Anyway, let's move on to your last book now.
My last book is surprisingly enough a Conan book. I mean, I've picked so many other books. I was really like I was really had a fight internally to replace one of these books with Conan 24, because this is my favorite cover in history. The first cover appearance of Red Sonja, which debuted in 23, which was her first appearance, but her second appearance has the better cover and therefore is way more sought after, and it's my favorite cover of all times. Yeah. But I don't really have like a nostalgic, like a story about it. It was just like a book that I absolutely love, and I bought way too many times already, probably removing some of the books from the market.
Yeah, I need that one. Yeah, I need the first Sonja. I need the first Elric as well, because that was in Conan as well, wasn't it?
Oh no, actually not. I thought so too. It's also wrongly cited on CGC. Elric debuted in a French comic in the 60s.
Oh, right, yeah.
This is the first American, like Conan 15 it's 15, I think. It's the first American appearance of Elric in a comic. But
So first Marvel.
meanwhile, a community member from France, Nicolas Leroy, he said he has his eyes open for me if he finds the French magazine in which Elric is reviewed.
That's cool. I'm kind of like, I've got a few Elric. I'm kind of like possibly the only person in the world who has Elric comics given to them by somebody called Elric. Because my housemate is named Elric. His dad named him after the character from the books because he was a big Hawkwind fan. And the bloke, Michael Moorcock, who wrote Elric, was a big like Hawkwind collaborator. And I think he did some art for them. He did some story for them, some narration.
The funniest name. Like I can never like
every time, a porn star, shouldn't he?
Every time I'm talking about Elric on a stream and I have to say Moorcock, it's
he should have been a porn star, the fella.
Yeah, he had very recently had his 80th birthday.
All right, cool. I think he's still writing, isn't he? I'm not too sure. I think he might still be writing.
Pretty sure he's still writing.
It's pretty cool. Anyway, anything else you want to say about that comic? We're moving on to the 5th comic now, or you were about to show it, I think. Yeah. Another comic then.
Yeah, the 5th comic I picked because it was very much a white whale for me. This was a book I was hunting for since I first time saw it. But back then I bought the Conan trades from Dark Horse, and I didn't know any shop where to look for it. So ever since I was on the lookout for this book, which is the King Conan #1 with Arnold as King Conan, drawn by San Julian.
Very, very moody cover.
The Hour of the Dragon. And this was White Whale. And when I've said in the community I was looking for it, people had their eyes open because back then this was actually not an expensive book, but it was not out there. Like nobody found it. And within 1 week, 2 people gifted it to me.
Oh, blimey, that's cool. I like Apex's spelling of your name there.
This is the version that Magic Lasso, one of my best friends in the community, found in an Australian comic book store because he ordered some Wonder Womans there.
All right, cool.
And this actually made all the way from Australia to the US to me.
So from Australia to Austria, it's pretty close.
Which is yeah. And Steve Whiting, who gifted me the Conan #1, also found one.
I think I listened to The Hour of the Dragon on an audiobook recently. Is that one where he's a king and at the beginning?
It's one of the best stories.
He gets usurped, doesn't he, at the beginning? By like a magic, like laid low by magic, doesn't he? And he has to fight his way back.
Yeah, it's pretty close to the Scarlet Citadel. So basically, Hour of the Dragon and Scarlet Citadel are 2 very similar stories. Yeah, but his king, he is captured and has to escape and fight back. And they basically adapted this story in the Karl the Conqueror movie with Kevin Sorbo.
Okay.
Which originally should have been the 3rd Conan movie, but they couldn't get Arnold, so they got Kevin Sorbo to play Karl and made the Karl movie.
Right. It's not really a replacement, is it, Kevin Sorbo for...
I still absolutely love the Karl movie. And I'm very sweet for Kevin Sorbo because I'm also a big fan of the Hercules series.
Right, yeah, I'd have to check that out someday if I get a chance.
Since you mentioned Austria and Australia, last week I ordered I had an order from Italy from a comic book shop, and I was looking at the tracking code and suddenly Australia. The Italian post misread Austria with Australian sent it.
Oh no! Oh no!
I'm now waiting so that the Italian store gets the books back, so they can't send it again to me because I wrote them. I actually wanted these books. I mean, Gary B is here in the comments because there's one book in there that I got for him as an AOK.
Oh right.
And there's also an AOK book in there for Magic Lasso. So I said no. It's like I'm really waiting, and please send it to me when you're getting it back.
Man, you have adventures with your comics. I've got to say, I suppose that being in like not like a well-known place for comic buying, and you've got to order from all around the world all the time. You kind of have a lot more adventures associated with getting your comic books.
Yeah, somehow all my comic books are very far traveled.
Yeah.
Also, with the comic book, it's so funny because it was really a ghost out there, and since since I mentioned that I want the book, and I think people were looking for the book, it pops up here and there for astronomical prices. Like sometimes I see it on eBay for $200 to $300, which is crazy.
What can you do? Some books get like that, don't they? Nothing you can do but either save up for them or just say, okay, I'm never going to get that one. And then sometimes they just pop up out of nowhere, don't they? Like you say, you wait for ages for that one to come along, then two come along at once.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's like life is a miracle. Like there's an early Atari game with Conan. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's true. It was originally like an early Atari game for Conan, and I was looking for this game for years. Couldn't find it because it's a beautiful cover with a 3D drawing of the Conan Destroyer pose of Arnold. And then I find it on an Austrian flea market page.
Okay, it's cool.
Greyman, are still here?
Yeah, I'm still here, mate. You've kind of gone frozen on mine. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, and then I found it on an Austrian flea market page and bought it for €20.
Cool. That's the thing. You say you don't know when they're going to turn up, do you? Sometimes you're unlucky, you never see it ever. Other times, it's, you can get lucky, and lo and behold, there it is.
Find it in your own country in a city that is 1 hour or 2 hours away from you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Life is great.
There you go. Enjoy it.
Hey, Pat.
All right.
Yeah, parents is for me it's very tough to say which Conan I like most, because I think that almost every artist had a very good version of Conan. Of course, the most popular one I think is the Buscema version by Big John Buscema. But Barry Windsor Smith had I think the Barry Windsor Smith Conan looks more like the Conan on the original Weird Fantasy covers, where the pulp stories debuted, because back then in the 30s, you didn't have such big bodybuilders back then, because also bodybuilding was still very much in its early beginnings, and they only got buff more later.
Yeah, the pre-steroid days.
The only depictions on Conan on Weird Fantasy were actually more muscular, like Tarzan, like more lean than actually like later. Of course, Conan was, because of course Conan is always like he always resembles the current most athletic man.
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
In the golden age of bodybuilding, Conan was depicted more as a muscular man, and Frank Frazetta, who also lifted weights himself, of course, also made him more muscular.
Okay.
So it's so really interesting. Also the history on the body transformation of Conan, and in the 90s, obviously, when you had like bodybuilders like Coleman. And of course, then Conan was like really. And now we are back more again to a more classic physique Conan.
Right. So you must have been taking some Hyborian age steroids for a while.
Yeah, they must have had a lot of chicken proteins, steak in the Hyborian age.
Yeah, I only ever see him drinking ale and I don't know. Just see him eating an awful lot, but I'm sure
Am
he does.
I still here?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Can you still hear me? Hey, I'm here. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Again. Okay. I think we've had a couple of little blips there. I don't know what's going on. If it's my internet or your internet. Got anything to add before we call this a stream? Anything else you want to add to that about that last comic? Oh, you're frozen again.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear you very well.
Oh gosh! I said, anything else you want to add about that last comic before we end this?
You sound like a Cyberman.
Oh no. Okay. I'm not sure whose internet is, because you sort of seem like you're going sort of stopping for a bit.
Yeah.
we might as well end it now anyway, because we've done all 5 comic books. Do you want to just say anything that's coming up on your channel? Let people know what's coming up with your channel soon.
On Friday, I have another movie stream with Sean on my channel. We haven't picked a movie yet, so we're going to discuss this week. Then during the week, I'm probably going to do a Red Sonja back issue haul video because I got some recent additions to my Red Sonja collection. And otherwise, no plans. I have to do some writing because I have to finish an abstract for, because I wanna answer a call for papers for Doctor Who magazine, and it's about Doctor Who and horror. And I'm gonna write about the two meetups of Deathset and Doctor Who when Deathset tries to kill the Doctor.
Yeah, they're quite weird. I don't think I've got any of those. I got a first one in Marvel Premiere, but he wasn't in that one, was he? Deathhead, I don't think. I'm sure I remember seeing him somewhere. I think I might have read him online or something like that. But that's quite a weird one. Anyway, thanks for coming on, mate.
Thanks for having me. And in the future, if you ever want to do need somebody on the show, you can always ask me.
Right, cool. And if you the thing is with these comic memories as well, which is good. Like people have got more than 5 memories, so they can always come back another time and share another 5 memories. Give it a few months when you've picked up some more comics and got some more stories to tell. You can come on again and chat some more. And if anyone in the chat wants to come on and have a chat with me sometime, sharing some comic memories, that would be cool. And yeah,
I've enjoyed it. I don't draw. I'm bad at drawing, and I don't enjoy drawing.
Okay. Chat will relay messages. Anything to add for
you? The only thing I can draw is above.
Right. Okay, then. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody. See you later.
Bye-bye.